as long as it records. Do did it tell you recording in progress?
It did a minute ago, but didn't again. It hasn't again yet. Oh, it
Okay.
says
Well,
recording at the top. It says recording at the top.
yeah, it's giving me. I was just double checking. I'm gonna have to edit it anyway. So annoying. Normally I try to do it, so it's like even for live calls, I do the same thing where I try to do the recording, so it's like I don't have to edit it, but then I always say something. I'm like, right, but right, we'll get started now. Right, Rory, welcome to the podcast. How are we feeling?
Good. Thanks for having me. This is the first time I've ever done one of these online, I think so.
Yeah, I know you're on the Young Hunger podcast. Obviously that's I think how we both know of each other because I was on that
Yeah.
one too. Um, it's incredible like what you've done. Obviously, I've seen your page. We both follow each other on Instagram. We've been back and forth, and this podcast was long overdue. And the reason I started this podcast in the first place, well, it's called the Dialed In podcast. It's very important that I get perspectives from a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I actually. I don't even think. I know that me and you definitely have a very, very different background. So I feel like this is going to be an amazing podcast where we have two very different approaches, two very different perspectives, and two very different, I want to say backstories, superhero stories,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe
100%.
villain stories for me for where I'm going. But yeah,
Depends
I
who's
always
listening.
yeah, that's it. That's it. I always like to put people on the spot. Clients always say to me, "Oh, why do you keep putting me on the spot?" I'm like, it gets you out of the comfort zone. So, and everyone hates this question on a podcast, but if I were to ask you, for the people that don't know you, who
Yeah.
is Rory Sloan? What would you tell me?
So Rory Sloan is a recovering addict, a kind individual, someone that works very hard, that takes care of how he looks, but also cares about other people's feelings they and how they are doing in their life as well. Like he always strives to see other people seeing better. Like nothing makes me more happier than watching other people achieve their goals.
Yeah, and I know obviously you've went into the coaching too, and we'll get into that in a wee minute. But
Yeah.
what I'm more so looking is what got you here? Like, where did we? You don't have to start whenever you were born in the hospital, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what happened for you? I always say that everyone has a fuck this moment, and it's not that it's always going to be one fuck this moment that completely sets someone into the journey that they're going to go through. But a lot of the
Yeah.
time, there's multiple different ones that people just have in their head where they're like, right, I decide. Well, obviously, there's the bad parts, and there's going to be fuck this moments with that, and then there's going to be the fuck this moments where people where you were like, okay, I've had enough of the life that I'm living. So if you start at the beginning, like what got you
Yeah.
into everything.
Drugs.
So yeah. Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started dabbling in drugs and stuff when I was about 13. I think I maybe started smoking and stuff, before that I always hung around with older people. I played football at younger, I always played a team up, so everyone was always a bit older than me. But it was more when I sort of moved into sort of first year. I went to Inst, a school in town where my dad went to, and but it wasn't the school that I wanted to go to, and I suppose going through it now, that's probably why I started to take drugs, to fit in. I was able to hang out with older people. It kind of helped me hide who I actually was, because it's seen as being like a posh school to a degree. And I was we're gonna call me a smick from East Belfast that played football going into the school. I got suspended in the first day for having my hair spiked up, so I felt quite uncomfortable, from the start. Um, so I started smoking weed, just casually, after school the odd time, and then it kind of became more of a frequent thing. And then it started getting into, well, how am I going to be able to afford this? So I started working out from a young age. You could say I had an entrepreneurial mind that I was buying 7 grams, for example, and then I was giving it to my mates. So I was getting mine for free. So that's why I was able to afford to sort of get it. And then word kind of just spirals about, like I struggled with my mental health, massive imposter syndrome. I think I attempted suicide for the first time at 14, self-harmed all the way up through my teenage years. But I all masked this, no one would have ever known, if that makes sense, because when I went out, I was never sober, but no one ever really knew that either. As soon as weed started to not do the trick for me anymore, it led me on to ecstasy, MD, which are obviously dearer, more intense. I was taking them in school, I was taking them after school. Now my parents are a good background, both together, live in a nice area, never touched a drug in their life, so they didn't really know what to expect. They didn't really know, what signs to look out for example. So that's how I kind of got away with it. To a degree. Going up through school, left school in fifth year. Mum and dad wanted me to do university in tech, like a sports diploma, I think it was I was doing. I didn't want to do that, but I did it anyway to keep them happy because I suppose I felt a degree of I let them down, that I didn't get back into school. But I partied that whole year. That was probably the kickoff to my really big, like where I started to sort of downfall a wee bit. I was going to Thompson's maybe 4, 5, 6 nights a week. I wasn't going to tech at all. I don't think I was sober at all the whole time. And it got to the last sort of some not semester, last sort of part of the year where the teacher came to me and was like, Rory, you have 23 assignments to hand in here in 3 days, where are they? And I was like, I tried to pull the card, I'd already given them to you, you've lost them, and obviously that didn't work. So I made the jump then to not tell, I didn't tell my mum and dad, I went and paid for my own personal training course. Um, I started it, then I told them they were raging. They were angry at the start, but it's probably the best thing looking back now that I ever did to a degree. Like education wise. Fell in love with training. I always done physical fitness, from being in school. I played rugby and stuff, and I enjoyed the gym in school. But that was the first time I kind of started to learn a lot about nutrition, about training. Started working as a PT. I did fall out with my mum and dad for a bit, so I was independent at this stage. I'd only would have been 18, 17, 18 years of age. What would it, 18? Would have been 18 years of age. Started PTing, making my own money. Fell in love with the sport of bodybuilding. Actually gave up drinks, drugs, started dieting from my first bodybuilding show. Working independent, and then 4 weeks out from the bodybuilding show, COVID hit, which cancelled the bodybuilding show, obviously. And I don't know if anyone listening knows what bodybuilding is like. It's a very intense diet, especially when you get down to them last 4 weeks. So from that, I developed an eating disorder. I lost my job because obviously the gym's closed and you didn't know when they were going to open. I was financially struggling. I started drinking all the time and I started sniffing coke to stop me drinking, basically. Head was absolutely wrecked. Didn't know where I was going. Coke's obviously a dear drug, so I started selling it to pay my bills. Started making money. Started, as it goes on, and it just kind of just got stuck from that. Then all of a sudden, all my friends were drug dealers. Everyone I hung around with took drugs. That was the normal. Anything I was doing, I didn't feel like was out of the ordinary. It felt like in my head, everyone done this. Um, so I did that until got wrapped up in that whole lifestyle until I was about 21. It was actually 3 weeks after my 21st birthday. I then got arrested with 120 grams worth of cannabis in a taxi, and I went to McGabry. Now I knew that obviously I didn't have any interaction with my parents or anything at this time, so I also knew everything I was doing was wrong, so I wasn't like kicking off at the police going, "Rah, what are you doing?" All that there. I was just like, yes, I knew this was going to happen at some stage. It is what it is. Went in, got in the cell, got declined bail. So I was like, right, I'm going to went to McGabry. And I was sitting there, and I don't care what anyone says, how big or hard you think you are. That place is not a nice place. It's basically I described it as a place where grown men cry. That's all I heard the whole time I was there. Um, and I've been such a sort of young person, it was quite hard to sort of cope with in my head to a degree. I also got two death threats from the paramilitaries, so that wasn't too nice either because you never know how they could get you. And I was thinking I thought they were my friends and all this here, and my head just kind of went a bit left. So I then got I was in while I was inside, the people came to me and was like, so basically, if you don't know, you get three chances to get bail. So my first two got declined, and then I had appealed for the third one. And I got told there was a Zoom call that I had to go take, and I was thinking, right, this is my solicitor telling me I'm gonna have to sit tight here for the next 4 years,
Yeah.
Let's go see what this is. And it was my mum and dad on the other side of the Zoom call, and that was the first time I'd spoke to them properly in probably a year or so. And I just broke down. I was just like, people that I thought didn't want anything to do with me, I didn't want anything to do with them to a degree. Our relationship was just rocky. We're sitting there saying, listen, you've done what you've done. How can we sort this? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? How are you gonna get through this? And I was like, in that decision, all of a sudden I had something to lose. I had nothing to lose before in my head. I knew what I was doing. Went to jail, I went to jail. If I died, I died. I had no thought process. I had nothing to lose, nothing to worth living for in my life. And at the moment, until my family came back, so they got me bail. They were able to get me. My nanny bailed me. I had to be outside of Belfast, and I got out. Never went back to selling drugs again. That was the end of my criminal activity. I removed myself. Didn't have a phone for a few months when I got out. Started going through the process, rebuilding that relationship with my family. I mean, my head was so shot. My anxiety was so bad I couldn't even hold a conversation. I was looking at the ground. I couldn't get words out or anything. But I did still struggle with the drugs for about a year. I got involved with a charity, started volunteering, doing work. I done a restorative justice thing, which is where I learned about what I was doing wasn't just hurting me and my family, but how I was hurting community and other people's family. I started doing addiction therapy with Emmett, who works alongside my company now, which is quite cool. And started that whole journey. I didn't get clean till the 27th of April in 2023. Um, but yeah, I went through all that. I started speaking. I started going to young men's groups and talking. I started sharing my story. I started building this huge passion, especially when I started to get clean and get out the other side of it. I started to be like, my whole person has changed. Now I've got out of this. Like the person I am now would go nowhere near the person I was a few years ago. And the person I was a few years ago would nowhere, nowhere near the person I am now, and that is a feeling. I was like, people need to understand that this is possible. So that's when I started to get the drive to do better and sort of help people. Um, and so then I got asked to do One Young World, which is a conference where 127 different countries come together, all under 30, and they're basically activists about all different issues around the world that go on. And it was held in Belfast because of the Good Friday Agreement anniversary, and I got asked to speak at it in front of 4,000 people. I spoke my story for the first time, and the reception I got from that and the feeling I got from that was just like, we need young people to talk about this issue because we have old people talking about it, but it's 10 years down the line. Young people are like, oh, it's different now, where no one can say that to me. I'm very newly out of the game, I'm very newly
Yeah.
into this, so I'm very relatable. So that's when I set up Resolute Minds, and yeah, now it's just thriving. Life's nuts.
Yeah. I like what you say about how not many people do speak about it because I do feel like there is a massive, or not feel, there definitely is a massive stigma around the
Yeah,
whole drink, well, not really drink, but the drug scene.
yeah,
Coming from me, like being completely honest, I was able to avoid that my whole life. Lucky enough, I
yeah.
do have friends that have went that route. I was just able to avoid it because of the fact I went straight from school into the corporate life. Corporate friends didn't really
Yeah,
do drugs, and then went from that into business, and that's why I feel it's really good for me to actually sit here with you and actually hear your story.
yeah.
Um, so that just that their event you did, you said 4,000 people. Was that all in person or was that an online virtual event?
No, that was all in person. It was held in the waterfront.
That's fucking unreal. That was
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah. No, it was mental. But you met like Rio Ferdinand knows at it. Like it's a big event. Like isn't no, he wasn't watching me. I don't think. Oh, I don't know because but he was there. It was kind of it was like a 4-day conference thing. So you went and you done workshops and there's breakouts and you went and learned about all loads of different stuff. It was actually really cool. It was in Canada last year, I think, or Germany maybe.
Yeah. And see to take you back to when you first started doing drugs. So obviously you first
Yeah.
started in school because it was a lot easier. It helped you to fit in with other people, it helped you fit in with the older people.
Mhm.
What do you feel around that time would have helped you to have not actually have went that route? So what do you feel right now is missing from whether that be the education system, whether that be from parents, or whether
Yeah.
that be from even just people online like me and you to spread a
Yeah. Yeah.
message? What is missing? What sort of education? What is needed if you were to say
Yeah.
from your experience what you needed
Well, I
at
would
that
think
time?
actually everything you just said there, there's a point in every sort of education system. We teach people how to have sex. Why do we not teach them what awareness of drugs? I don't think people really understand, even especially the older generation. Now I've got into schools and, I've actually got really good feedback from people that have listened to the talks in schools. I got one yesterday, which was mad. Some guy ran up to me in the street and was like, "Do you remember I'm now 3 years off the smoke? 3 months off the smoke or whatever." And I was like, just from talking. I wasn't even one to one, you know. But I think education, you know, around why we take drugs, what a come down is, what a hangover is, you know, explaining what substances do and why we take them and why it makes us feel good and the cautious and how we can become addicted. Because the thing about addiction is you can't get tested for it, and I do believe it's a disease. You know, it's something that some people just have. You know, we're all addicted to something, but some people are need that substance. You know, in my head, you know, and that's the problem I have with uni, for example, is which is why I think it needs educated is uni's known for partying. Um, but say me and you went and we both partied for 3 years straight. It was normal completely. No one looked at you if you were on it 5 days a week. And then uni stops, you go to work, you're back to drinking once a month, but I can't just stop drinking. I just can't stop it. You know, this how now isn't over. And that's where you need to educate people that this is like real life. This kills people. And I think it's getting better. You know, I do think it's getting better. I think we're still a million miles off. The same as mental health. You know, when I was back in school, there was no such thing as depressed. There's no such thing as ADHD, which I found out I have ADHD and ADD as well, you know, so it's like there was no such thing as these things until I was kind of leaving school, which is only a few years ago, realistically. You know, so it is very much a modern. I think they are becoming more real, more realization that, you know, we need to nearly have an early intervention with this, in my opinion, more than fuck this has happened. How do we fix it? Let's
Yeah.
educate so it doesn't happen. Other points you said there was what would you say, education system, how to stop people like us. I think people talking about it as class, you know, if we remove the stigma straight away, everyone's addicted to something. I always tell parents when I speak to them that don't really understand it, put your phone in the cupboard for 24 hours, write down how many times you think about it, how many times you go to get it, and how many times you actually lift it out. You know, that's what being an addict's like. You know, we all have our own thing, and you know, I think people talking about it, you know, you have people on TikTok, you know, sharing experiences, and you know, I think that's class. It helps remove the stigma, it helps people listen. You know, the amount of clients I've got from TikTok, you know, alone is just because it's relatable. Um, and clients I have now hitting a year and a few months sober, looking to come and help people and talk about it and want to give back. You know, I think that's massive. I think lived experience is a huge thing, and no matter what line of work you're in, you know, for example, physical fitness, you know, you want to show that you've got into shape, you know, to then have the lived experience to help someone else get into shape to a degree. You know, you're not going to go to someone that's out of shape as a PT. You know, so if you actually think about it, lived experience works in all kind of walks of life, you know, and especially through stuff like that there, I think lived experience is starting to become a thing that everyone is kind of realizing, you know, sometimes a degree isn't good enough when you're dealing with stuff. And what was the other point you said there was good that
So
I actually agreed.
there's the parenting side of it, and then there could also be third parties, but parenting's more realistic
Yeah,
because
parenting, I think parents, you know, again, parents are just going to know what they know. I think definitely, I'm actually currently trying to, it's on the down low at the minute. I haven't actually disclosed it, but I'll mention it anyway. I'm looking to open my own sort of gym wellness hub, which then I would love to open parents workshops, you know, where they can come and they can learn about it, you know, because first thing you do when a parent when they come home young and blocked or on drugs is you're screaming at them and shouting at them, you know, and they're in this state of mind where they're now depressed and riddled with anxiety and it's just fueled by drugs, and that's not necessarily the best way to go about it. You know, you're nearly better wait until they sober up, looking after them, letting you know that they're sobering up, and then questioning them on their behavior. But as you can understand, it'd be frustrating as a parent. But I do think a bit of education around it. You know, like my mum and dad never seen drugs in real life until they caught me with like 2.5 grams worth. I was like 15, you know. And then when they found out I was on drug, my mum didn't know if he sniffed it, injected it, you know, whatever. You know, she didn't know. So they then research about it. Where if that had been a thing that maybe parents had the option to do, I would say a lot of parents would go and learn about it anyway, you know, just to be aware, and learn how frequent it is. You know, you can get a bag of Coke quicker than you can get a Domino's delivery in Belfast. You know, it's insane. And I just don't think that the older generation have a full grasp of how accessible and easy it is to get.
yeah, and it's definitely a case of keeping it stupidly simple. So what you said
Yeah.
there, most people aren't going to know. Okay, they see their kid, they're coming in, they think their kid's drunk, but the kid's actually on drugs and they're giving off about X, Y, Z. But if they could actually see those signs and they know the best way to deal with it, and they know, right, tr chillax now. take care of them
Yeah.
now, give them the support they need now, and then after you can have that conversation about what to do from there. Something so simple like that could completely
It's
change
even
actually.
making a parent aware, like what a come down is, if you go nuts, crack up your kid, kick him out while he's on drugs and the drugs wear off, his serotonin levels, say this is you normal, you go on drugs, they're up here, and then you come off for about a week to 2 weeks, they're way down here, so this is your normal level. So then if you think your mom and dad have kicked you out because you're on drugs and they've screamed at you and they say they don't want to be near you anymore because you're on drugs, you're then more likely to be suicidal. And it's actually fueled by just because of your low mood of being on a substance. Same as a hangover, it's the exact same thing. So it's even trying to make parents aware that that stage of a week after, their mood is going to be low, which is why we find people going, um, you take drink or drugs on Saturday, goes through to Sunday, you stop, you go to work, you hate your job, you hate your life, you go to Friday and you go drink on the weekend. So you've never actually recouped your whole mind. So technically you've never been who you actually are. Because by the time your body, brain recoups after abusing it on the weekend, you're going out and taking it again. Which I think a lot of people aren't aware of. I have friends, go out every single weekend. Technically their brain is never sober,
Yeah. And
which is insane to think about.
you know that these friends go out, or are they just drinking, or do you know that they're
No,
taking drugs?
that's why I think my program works. I have no everyone struggles. I still like two of my best friends are still drug addicts. They're just not ready to make the change. We just have a thing where we meet up once a month sober, and then what they do outside of that, they're just not ready and they try. But against who they surround themselves with. And then I have other friends that can go out and take it once a month and stop. And then they go to work and work for a month or two. They'll do it, on occasions or whatever. But see, that's the other thing as well. Like I see drink just as bad as drugs. The same way if someone's an addict, gambling or porn or anything, it's all the same. People would be like I've met parents where they're like for example, I always use my mum and dad for an example. I would say maybe, hopefully not, but right, say I went to my mum and dad, was like, Mum, I'm gonna have a drink with you here. Just used to, in a controlled environment, I'm just wanna have a few drinks. Let's say they were like, yeah, no problem, because they drink, that's normal, you can buy in a wine mark. But I went, Mum, I want to go sniff a gram here, but I'm going to do it in front of you. I'm going to be controlled. All of a sudden, that's not okay. But why? What's the difference? I struggled with both substances. There shouldn't be one better than the other. And I think that's one thing that we need to really show as well. A lot of parents feel like, oh, why can't my son ever drink again? Because that's how they bond. But then if he went and gambled and took coke, you would want to disown him. You can't look at it like that. Everyone, it's an issue. What their issue is their issue, and they have to be both respected the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, and there definitely isn't that same demonization with alcohol as there is with drugs. Thankfully, there is that demonization. Obviously, within certain groups, it's not demonized, or within certain groups, it's actually
Yeah,
covered up where the groups will go out, they'll go on the weekend, they'll take drugs. It could even be in a corporate scene where the whole
yeah,
team, they all know that they're getting on the bag on the weekend, but they don't actually mention it outside of that, and they don't actually, and I say this goes with a lot of people with different things, it's self-sabotage where you're
yeah,
just purposely not actually looking at your life for what it is and instead just coasting, letting these substances control you rather than actually taking that full control and that agency with yourself and with your own life. So, with that, what do you think of occasional use? So, we'll start off with drugs. So, what do you think of, let's say I came out of uni, I went into my corporate job, and I was on the bag once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on the month.
yeah.
I was never addicted to it. What do you think of that?
See, I'm gonna be controversial as fuck here because a
Go
lot of
for it.
people disagree with me, but I don't. It's like if you can go out and you can take a half gram and have 2 pints on one Saturday, 2 month, 2 gram, two once every month or whatever, 2 months, you're still going to work, you're still doing everything there. In my head, I'm like, I wish I could do that. If I could do that, I'd be doing it. You know what I mean? That's the way I kind of look at it because you know, drugs, and I believe if alcohol was made nowadays, it would be just as illegal as drugs. More people die from alcohol than they do from cocaine. Do you know what I mean? So people just have this in their system because it's legal, but it's legal because it was made flipping years ago when laws were, and now they can make loads of money on it through tax. So I'm not going to say I don't have an issue with it. I don't agree with taking drugs to a degree because, as well, you don't know what's in them. For example, cocaine nowadays. So actually, fun fact, when you take pure cocaine, you shouldn't receive anxiety or a come down or anything like that there. If you went to Colombia and got pure cocaine, you shouldn't actually get any of that. The reason we get that now is because it's mixed with stuff, so that's the issue with taking drugs, which is what I think people need to be aware of. Um, so it actually is a double. I'm thinking about it, I've got my brain working. It is kind of like a double-ended sort of answer. If you can go out and take it once, do you have an issue? No. But would I advise you on doing it? No, because for example, I know now that cocaine's mixed with fentanyl, which is what actually kills you. Heroin's not what kills you, it's the fentanyl ratio that kills you. Um, so that's why people are getting more depressed, getting more reliant on it, getting more heavier come downs. Um, so that's what, example, you see them people in the news. I don't know if you've seen it, had the pink cocaine.
Can't say
They
I've
called
seen it.
it,
I
it
avoid
was
the
a
news typically.
Okay. So yeah, to be fair usually, but
Yeah.
stuff I have to keep on top of. It was about a couple of months ago in well, it used to be Fat Weds. I don't know what it's called now. But two girls took pink cocaine and died. So there is that chance. You have to understand that whenever you take drugs, there is a chance that that can just kill you straight away because you don't know what's in it. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose. It depends. Like it's a double question. If someone told me they were taking drugs today and they're not going to take them now till Christmas, would I be like, "You need help"? No. But would I be like, "Yeah, go ahead"? No, I still wouldn't do that either. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, like you would never advise anyone to do it, but
I'm
if
never
they
gonna go, yes, go and take drugs, on the weekend. I'm never gonna do that. But see, I'm not gonna say someone needs help. If they do, I just think they need to be very cautious and really ask why.
Yeah, and you can't help someone if they don't one need the help or two, even if you feel like from your perspective and your background that they need help, you can never help
Yeah.
someone if they don't want the help. And you know that yourself. People probably try to help you when you were going through your experiences,
Yeah.
but you didn't want the help. No matter how much you needed the help, you didn't go for it because you didn't want it.
Yeah, well, I actually have had experiences, with some clients. That's again the difference between me and other organizations because I'm not charitable funded. For example, I don't have to tick a box. So if someone's not willing to put the work in, they're not ready and they're not there yet, I'll just tell them, listen, this isn't going to work if you don't do it. So there's no point wasting your money. Come to me. Someone else could have this space. You have to be ready to take that place. And then I also have people come to me and go, no, I want to do it alone. And I'm like, you are doing it alone, even if you come to me for help. The same as like a PT, I could give you all the gym plans in the world, but unless you do the other days that you're not with me, you're not going to get any progress. If you're not cooking them meals, like if you're not eating clean and doing whatever, outside of this 1 hour session that we have, nothing's going to change. Do you know what I mean? You are
Yeah.
still doing it yourself. That person has to commit to the cause because getting into recovery, I don't know if you've seen the clip on my Instagram. I was doing the redefining the alpha event there, um, which is about men's mental health, and I was on a panel, and someone asked, "What would be your lowest moment?" And I was like, "My lowest moment's actually probably when I started to get into recovery, because that was horrendous. It was awful. Like I didn't, and that's what people need to understand. People see getting in when you say recovery, everyone's like, "Yeah, my life's back together. It's class." Do you know what I mean? But that is far from the case. Even in the first few months, if you think you've been hiding and you've been basically using a painkiller for all your emotions, and all of a sudden you stop taking drugs and all these emotions just hit you 10 times as hard and you don't know how to cope with them. It's horrendous. So yeah, I think I answered your question. We rambled there, but
Yeah. No, definitely not. A lot of people see someone getting recovery, they'll be like, "Oh my God, that's class." Because, of
yeah,
course, what's the outcome? You're getting the help, but the process of you going through recovery, that's the first few steps of you finally being open and honest with not just everyone around you, which in turn is its own battle, but the biggest battle is always going to be with yourself. And you finally come clean with yourself. You finally stop lying to yourself, and now you actually have to sit there and face your own thoughts and face your own demons and
yeah,
go through that. So I probably would have actually assumed that the worst part for you was when you were on like at your lowest point with the drugs, but that is a
yeah,
really good perspective. Whenever you're coming out of it, that's actually the hardest point because that's when
yeah.
you're so self-aware of everything.
I think I said, like even like suicide attempts, getting arrested, anything like that there, people would think that's the lowest, but like that was just me. Like I was. expected all that. I was trying to numb everything then. Every time I took drugs or anything like that there, I knew there was a chance I couldn't wake up tomorrow, but I was fully okay with that, so I wasn't actually like I didn't feel it was my lowest. I was accepted. I was accepted that, if that makes sense, that was a choice. But whenever I got into recovery, it's nearly like you're now trying to survive, in the first few months without going back. I can't even, I don't even think you could describe it until you've gone through it, to be honest. It was mental.
Yeah. And did you have a
But worth
stage
it. It
then?
doesn't last forever.
Yeah. Did you have a stage then? You said there didn't last forever. Did you have a stage when it was like, right, I do accept myself now, or is it a
Yeah.
continuous battle?
No. So basically, I took drugs for a year after I got arrested, roughly a year. Was going through the whole court process. It lasted about three, 2.5. What was that? Three. What am I? What year is it now? 2025. So it lasted just under 3 years. And I was obviously doing all the right things, but the main reason, the main fuel to my drug dealing, to a degree, was my drug taking, to fund my own addiction as well. And so the judge asked me to pass a drug test, and everyone behind me, I had my girlfriend behind me, my family behind me, they didn't know I'd been taking drugs, and I was out the night before because I thought I was getting locked away, wired to the moon. So that was the first time and I was honest. I said, no, I'm not gonna pass it. And that was the first time I vocalized, you know, that I was still taking drugs, that I still had an issue to a degree. And from that day, that's the day that I've never touched a drink or drug since. And um it was more just, that was me actually admitting to myself. That was me vocalizing it, and realizing, fuck, I need to sort my shit out here. And the fact everyone still stayed and supported me, and just left it up to me to make the decision. It was rather that or go in jail for a long time as well. But I always say to my therapist, I feel like that made it easier for me to get into recovery to a degree because I had that sort of ultimatum, if that makes sense. But he always says you need to give yourself credit. As soon as that drug test was done, you could have just went straight back to taking drugs again. And you would have already passed the drug test, to a degree. So there is that kind of side of it as well. But that would have been as you said, that was the first time I actually vocalized it, and realized, frig, I still have an issue here.
Yeah, and do you still work with a therapist, and how have you found that experience for just for anyone right now that's actually thinking about going into therapy? I have multiple clients who are
Yeah.
in therapy. I've actually started it myself, more mental performance side of the therapy side, but
Yeah.
I found it to be incredible. So would love to hear your take.
Yeah, so I'd been to a few counselors, before I found Emmett, who was my therapist, and I just didn't click with them. They were useless. I do think a therapist needs to be something that you find. There's loads of different personalities, loads of different people out there. And when I met Emmett, I walked in, and to describe him, he looked like a gangster. He was a wee bald man, a beard and a big chain around his neck, and he sat down, hey kid, do you know what I mean? And that made me feel comfortable straight away. I felt like he was someone that understood what I was going through. Um, Therapy for me changed my life because it reopened my mind to why I was taking drugs, like what sort of drove me to be the way I was to a degree, like childhood trauma, things that had happened to me that, I maybe blocked out all come back, and realize, oh, this is why I can't handle my anger very well because this scenario happened, or, and that's why. And then obviously people that become addicted to drugs, we use them to suppress our feelings and our emotions. So that can be why, because you've got stuff there that can trigger it on a daily, and you're not even aware of it. I believe everyone should go to a therapist for a few sessions because you'll find out a lot about yourself. Even if you don't think you're struggling, but if you are struggling, find one that's just works for you and is relatable. That's why, that works for you, that's relatable. I mean, Emmett's the Diall In way is perfect because he actually used to be an addict himself too, so he knows what you're going through at the same time. Yeah, therapy. When I found the right therapist, it was the best thing for me, and I still, I speak to him daily if I ever need to struggle. If I'm really still getting, sometimes I'll go into down periods still, and I'll just be like, I'll ring him up and say, Emmett, can you book me in for a few sessions here and just not talk about anything else? That's an hour where we just talk about what's going on in my noggin. But it's something that I don't do it every week, but I still have it there, and I will still go back at least a few times a year.
Okay, no, that's good, and I know the benefits, tremendous benefits. So if anyone is thinking about going for it, Definitely go for it. One thing for me that I found that's helped me the most in my journey with just becoming better and on my road. I always say becoming the better version of you rather than becoming the best
Yeah,
version of you, because truth is you're never going to be the best version of you. It's a process, and it's not like especially if someone came to me or you for coaching, it's not that we can just be like, right, we're going to get you to become the best version of you and that's it. It's going to be a long-term
yeah,
process. It's actually about keeping you to become the better version of you. Same way
progressive.
whenever, yeah, whenever you came clean, it wasn't just about becoming clean. It was about becoming clean and keeping clean, and then having other things to focus on that. How have you found, and being completely honest with this, helping other people as a form of not therapy, but as a form of self-improvement, and even for helping you with your journey? Because I
Yeah,
know for me that from coaching everyone that I've coached, from coaching over 120 people, that one of the best results that I've got. Obviously, there's been great results, and I don't want to
yeah,
downplay
yeah.
my clients' results, but the result I've seen for myself from coaching other people has been absolutely incredible. How I've matured, how I've aged. I look about 40 when I'm 21. So I'd love to see how it's impacted you.
Yeah, no, every person that stands or sits or talks in front of me, I always learn. There's out of that period they're there with me, I always learn something from them, to make me a better person, learn about other people's scenarios, no matter what it is, there's always something I learn. So as a coach, whether it's in the gym or mentoring both sides, no matter who sits in front of me, every client I've dealt with, I have learned off them just as much as they're learning off me. So if you think you're adding that up over time, you're just growing as a person as well. I think it's been definitely beneficial. You hear about what way different backgrounds people have come through, different way people are feeling, different things they do to help make themselves feel better. You know, loads of different things. Even sometimes you hear people, if you think about it from the gym point of view, some people be like, a really simple point of view, oh, I made this meal, it's this amount of protein in it. All of a sudden I've learned that off them. They should be learning it off me. All of that, I do believe there's not been one client that I've had that I haven't learned something off to make me a better version of me.
Yeah. And for you then, sharing your story on social media, how did you find that? Because I've got a lot of clients that actually want to get into social media. I've got a lot of people I
Yeah.
speak to that want to get into it, but they've got a massive problem they want to solve. Because everyone on social media at the end of the day, it's because they've got one problem that they just want to solve. They got a message that they want to spread, and it's from their story, and they want to help other people from the story and from everything that they've been through. Obviously, your story is incredible, very deep, very, very personal. How did you find then actually initially taking that leap into the online world?
Yeah, I still struggle with it, to be honest. Online, talking in front of a camera, I'd rather have 10,000 people sitting in front of me, than actually speaking on a camera to a degree because number one, when I first started speaking on social media, I was on the newspaper, I was in the news and all, so I was getting a lot of hate. People calling me a UVF scumbag, drug dealer, all this here, coming underneath, which was quite hard to deal with at the start. But the way I looked at it, what kind of helped me was I knew what I was giving out there was value. And say as soon as I had one person message me and be like, that's really helped me get through this period of my life, then I was like, that's worth it. Fuck everyone else. It's going to be negative. Do you know what I mean? It's more the actual talking on the car. So I find it hard to talk to no one, which I'm trying to get used to and stay actually in, not routine with it, stay, doing it all the time. But yeah, that would be the thing for me. If as long as I know what I'm putting out into the world is good, fuck what anyone else says, in my opinion. And that's something that I didn't come instantly. Definitely not. I used to care a lot about what people think. I used to not want to, you know, I used to not want to put myself in situations, especially coming out the other side of it, where people were going to maybe see what I'm doing now and talk about me, but. It's got to that point now where I just like see unless you have my phone number, I can care less what you think.
Yeah, yeah, people will troll, people don't they're barely human on social media. It's why they make fake profiles and just there to
Yeah.
take the piss.
But it actually is weird. That's the one thing I've noticed. I've actually had a few people only recently come up to me that have seen me on TikTok or Instagram, and that's a feeling it's weird as well because when you do talk to your phone in your head to a degree, you're kind of like I'm talking to no one here. It's kind of hard to fathom that there's actually people listening to you on a phone. Do you know what I mean? And then when someone come up, I had a guy, first scenario, I actually made a funny video. I was like, I think I'm an influencer now, because I come out of the and this guy ran out of the barbers and was like, Rory. And I was still in my head. This is how freak it is. First in my head, I'm sitting going, am I about to have to lay him out here? Or is this a good you, Rory? Or is this a Rory? He come up to me and say, I've seen you on TikTok, keep doing what you're doing. This is class. And I kind of got in the car and I was sitting going, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean? I don't like, it's just, it is weird. It is weird, but it's good for them as well, that there's people out there that you would never even have speak to or known or have no mutual ground at all that are able to help. I think it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, and it's an incredible buzz, like to be honest too, just being able to see the impact that you've had. So, like I would say, see for anyone that is on the fence about uploading to social media and wants to do that and has a message to send and knows that they're going to put positive stuff in the world. If you're going on just to, I don't know, upload hate content, which you're seeing a lot of people do now, maybe don't listen to this piece of advice. But if you do have something that you're widely passionate about, people are going to improve from it. And in your case, like, it's gonna not just change lives, it's gonna save lives, and just fucking go for it. And you can't let those threats or whatever people say about you, UVF scumbag, stop you. How did you actually then overcome? You were saying about facing death threats whenever you're in prison. How do you feel about that? Because that's like obviously there's okay, someone calling you a dickhead on social media, but then there's getting an actual death threat
Threat.
from from some people or a group of people that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
are known to be threatening. So how did you get over that? Or did you
Um,
ever worry?
it was weird because at the mindset when I got arrested, I was still very much in criminal Rory mindset. I was kind of going, fuck these people, why are they doing this to me? I thought we were mates, I'll show them kind of thing, right? That's good. So that was the mindset. It was more when I got out and I actually realized, genuinely I couldn't go back into Belfast. I couldn't go to my mum and dad's house for like over a year. I didn't want to risk, someone seeing me driving in, and causing a lot of hassle. I was quite lucky to a degree that I didn't owe. They didn't threaten me because I owed money. Do you know what I mean? They threatened me because I was going to stop selling, and then they weren't getting any money off me. Um, so that was only the thing, but like I live back in Belfast now. It's all blown over. They've probably got their own other victim now. That they're going on, and life moves on. Will I still go and walk through Conswater? No. Partly because no, it's not even that. I'm not gonna say I'm scared of them, but I'm scared to put myself in that position. If that makes sense, I don't want to be seen as someone coming to get me in and I'm me having to do something to protect myself or something, then it all gets blown out, So I just keep myself away from the situation, which obviously is something that you shouldn't have to do. No human being should have to feel like they can't go in somewhere because they feel like someone's gonna start, to a degree. But at the end of the day, that's the choice you make. Again, I knew that this was all the outcome of what I was doing, so I can't really complain about it. I've got a pretty good outcome, considering, what I was doing and what I was involved in. So, it was one of them things. People kept asking questions where I was living when I first got out. I didn't tell anyone where I was living. No one knew. I didn't have a phone. I didn't speak to anyone. So eventually that all blew over and it is what it is. But I do know that, if you say I did owe them money for stuff or anything like that there, that can be a different ballgame. So it is, I was quite fortunate in that way.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're all good. I've got your back if you need anything, but I
Yeah.
don't have any guns or anything. So the dialed in's got your back, but
I know, we're all good.
not that
I've
we
seen
might
you,
be any
you've
use.
got a,
Like,
you've got a sword. You've got a sword though, so you get that
oh God, watch this be clipped up and sent to them, and I'm like, oh my God,
out. I
me and
know.
my sword, me and my sword versus guns and all. But well, we'll see. I'll be careful next time. Next time I'm back in Belfast, I need to wash myself. Have the sword in the trousers as well. Just be ready. Um, just really the final question then. See for anyone that's listening to this that wants to do something similar to you, whether that's in terms of recovery, but it doesn't just need to be recovery. It could be social media, spread a message,
Yep.
or if it's even in business, because obviously you're entrepreneurial. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs. You start your own business, you put yourself out there.
Yep.
What would your message to finish the podcast be for them?
What have you got to lose? Do you know what I mean? Like seriously, like again, right? Let's look at it in all of the what you just said there. Again, it's quite good. If you're stuck in addiction, what have you got to lose trying to get into recovery? Nothing. Recovery, if anything, will bring you out the other side. If you're going to post on social media, we have seen people that post and it changes their lives within a few months. So what have you got to lose? Oh, it doesn't work. I'm on, you're still in the same place. Start that business. Worst case scenario, you have to go and work in Tesco's, which a lot of people do. You have to go back and work for somebody, take that risk, especially if you're young. If you're young, right, and you still live with your mom and dad, you have no excuse. Take that risk, make the choice. If it's something that you believe in and you want to work with, I just think a lot of people, especially in Northern Ireland, we're so close-minded, and we have this sort of like we're from Northern Ireland, we can't achieve this. Where I'm quite lucky, as in my mindset has always been, if someone else can do it, why can I not? Do you know what I mean? And that's the way everyone I think should look at it. If you want to, like, see people. I hear them say to their kids, "Oh, there's a low chance of you becoming a professional footballer," and you're saying that to their friggin' 12-year-old. If that, who knows? If that 12-year-old's going to train as like Ronaldo and train every day and dedicate the next 10 years of his life, to playing football, what's to say he can't? You don't know. You don't have a big global ball there. So take the chance, take the risk. What's the worst going to happen? Say as long as it doesn't put you or anyone else in harm way, fuck it.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. What a way to end. Rory, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story, for putting yourself out there, for making yourself vulnerable. Because
Yeah, no
as
problem
we
at all.
all,
Thanks for having me. It was good to finally get a human connection there instead of just texting each other.
yeah, no, that's it. It's a fucking hard gig when you're working online, and yeah, that's why it's good to obviously network with other people who do similar things, other people in business, other people online on social media, profiles online. So yeah, that's it's good. If you I do have an event coming up, a castle event, don't know if you've seen it. I might see you there. We're getting a lot of different people online coming to that as well.
Yeah,
And for
yeah,
the
no,
people listening to this podcast too that want to go,
yeah.
give me a shout.
Network's your net worth. So definitely, if you have a date there, let me know. Send it over
10th
to
of
me.
January.
Fucking right, I'll be there.
That's the
Send it.
pitch. That is the
Why
pitch.
not?
Like that was the whole thing for the podcast, just to pitch the
Yeah,
event.
good.
Oh
Why
God.
not? Send it.
No worries. But yeah, no, it'll be good to meet in person as well and get I know like obviously I've seen that you've collabed with other people online too. I'm gonna say just really get as many influencers, if you want to call I don't some people don't like being called influencers.
Yeah, yeah,
Influencers, personalities online, business owners, professionals, clients of other coaches, just as many people as possible to this event, just to really bring self-improvement alive because it can be a very lonely gig. And I know
yeah,
for me, it has been a lonely gig. For you, it probably has been a lonely gig too. So I think it's very important that we all have that opportunity to be together, be in the same room and grow, expand.
yeah. No, definitely. If you send me over the wee thing, I'll actually put it in my diary anyway. No, I'd definitely be game for something like that.
No bar, no bar. I need to market it more if you didn't see it. Buck, need to get it out more. I'm gonna mention it more in the podcast here going forward. But yeah, if anyone wants to find you, where should they go? Do you have a preferred method of
Yeah, so Instagram resolute.minds or TikTok Rory's underscore recovery is kind of the best place, but Resolute Minds has a website where you can read more about me and my life to a degree in depth. And if you need help, please do reach out. Even if I'll get like I don't just do it for the money. If you can't afford it and you need a bit of advice and a bit of a few things to maybe help you make that step, reach out. I'm always here to listen.
yeah, that's it. That's it. That's great. And I can attest to that. I know a few of your clients and they're flipping winning. We actually share a client as well. I'm not gonna say his name just for
Yeah,
confidentiality.
yeah,
He's winning, like he is winning. He's doing really
yeah,
well, and I can see from your story how he gets inspiration from you. So it's incredible. So
yeah,
just
yeah.
big well done, and thank you very much for
Very
coming
much.
on,
Thanks
guys.
for having me.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, see you all later. Boom, dialed in.
See you there.
Oh wait, actually, before you go, podcast hasn't ended. I always like to get the guests to guess what the outro is for this podcast. I don't know if you've listened to any of the other ones, but I
Guess,
like to make it awkward for them.
guess the outro.
guess what the outro. So there's a phrase I get guests to say at the end. I don't always tell them because I want to test them to see if they can actually guess. It's like
Right?
a quote. It's like a stupid, corny quote, but I just think it's funny and adds a good bit of awkwardness to the end. You know, like when you're
Probably,
trying to wrap up a
is it
podcast,
something to do with getting dialed in? No?
it is something to do with getting dialed in.
Getting dialed is something to do with getting dialed in. Dialed in with McGuinn. Is that your name?
Oh, oh no, it's not. It's not. It's just you just look directly at the camera. Well, you don't have,
Right?
you can do it whatever way you want. You look directly at the camera, you go, and you say in the most serious tone ever. It has to be serious because if it's not serious, it's just not. It's not going to influence people. You just say,
Right.
"It's time to dial in."
Okay. It's time to dial in. No
Oh, Rory, thank you very much. Have a great day.
worries.
Bye bye.